Latest World Bank report shows South Africa's economy is expected to grow by just 1.1% in 2018, one of the lowest rates in sub-Saharan Africa. And its global economic outlook predictions of GDP growth around the globe. This was made known of the 43 countries that make up sub-Saharan Africa. Only two, Equatorial Guinea and Zimbabwe, were forecast to have lower growth rates than South Africa in 2018. The World Bank said sub-Saharan Africa's growth would likely average around 3.2% in 2018, about 0.1% higher than the world average of 3.1%. Growth was expected to be particularly strong in what the bank calls non-resource intensive countries. All right, let's talk about South African economy outlook 2018. Investment trader Petri Redelinghuys joins me via Skype from South Africa. Many thanks for your time, Petri.
Thank you for having me.
The South African economy emerged from recession in 2017, but it's still underperforming. And a lot is going on for Finance Minister Gigaba now. Policy uncertainty is likely to remain and could slow needed structural reforms. And of course, he also has in his hands the issue of unemployment at record levels. Talk to us about the South African economy and how you think it would look like with all we have in 2018.
Well, I'm a bit more optimistic perhaps than the World Bank. I mean, I don't think necessarily that their GDP forecast is wrong. I just think that our economy is currently lagging behind and struggling somewhat on the back of what is essentially a very corrupt sort of leadership structure at this point. And now what we've seen is, if you look at the way that the Rand's performed over the last couple of weeks since Cyril Ramaphosa took over leadership of the African National Congress, or of the ANC, the ruling party, it seems as though there's a lot of faith in Cyril Ramaphosa to take over and to fix some of the issues that we have. Now, he has been very outspoken against corruption, as well as trying to get economic growth going again. And I think that if he can put his money where his mouth is, and if we can put an end to some of the corruption that we see in South Africa, then we are in a situation that we can have significantly higher GDP growth than the 1.1% that the World Bank is forecasting for South Africa. So that is really just the trick. And I think that if you look at even the events that happened today, the way that the currency moved, the Rand had strengthened today on the back of the comments that the National Prosecuting Agency or the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority, I think, will be pursuing, some of the assets that were essentially linked to the Guptas. This is potentially one of the, or Mackenzie at least, that they've acquired through the Guptas. This is potentially the first step in what could be a series of cases made against the Guptas, and hopefully the rooting out of some of the corruption that we have. Now, if these things come to pass, and the government funds the taxes that are being raised by government, if we can redirect those taxes instead of having them squandered, I suppose, into the places where they should be going, I think that we could be in a situation where the South African economy could recover beyond any of our expectations. But it is all to be seen. I think that the ratings agency's outlook on South Africa, they've said it many times, and to some extent I have to agree with them. It's not necessarily so much about the actual underlying economy at this point as what it is about the problem that we have with political stability, policy, we don't know what the situation is with policy changes and so on. So there's a lot of uncertainty around what is actually going on and what is actually going to be implemented and what's going to be changed. I think if we start seeing some surety around what the policy is going to be, and if we start seeing some of the negative effects that we have had and we've experienced because of the corruption that's been taking place, I think if we can bring an end to those things, then we're in a very good situation and our economy could grow really, really quickly. So I, for one, am somewhat optimistic. I think that we probably will see South Africa beating the World Bank expectation in terms of GDP growth for the year. I also think that, if we were to remove some of the negative sentiment around South Africa, but which, by means of new leadership, which is something that Cyril Ramaphosa is making great strides in.
All right, Petri, let me come in here now. Let me come in here. Yes, it's been also predicted that many African countries are going to be looking at China to buy their resources, but that poses a great risk to countries like South Africa also. What do you think, or where do you think African countries should be looking at in this area? I know it's been touted that commodity exporting will be good, especially South Africa also gaining from that end.
Well, yes, the World Bank also noted that countries that do not rely solely on exporting of commodities, companies like Cote d'Ivoire and so on, there's a number of them actually. If they, so you're looking at, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya. These countries are expected to grow the most, in the order that I named them: 7.2%, 6.9%, 8.2%, 6.8%, and 5.5%. And they are not sort of the commodity dependent economies, if you want to call them that. So they're actually poised to do a lot better. If South Africa has a little bit of competition in the terms of other African companies coming to markets, selling to China, the product that we've been selling to them, which is essentially commodities and resources, well, then so be it. Competition is healthy. I don't think that should be. I don't think that should scare us off, if that makes any sense.
All right, just before I let you go, let me get your opinion on the H&M controversy. Just a few days ago, what do you think it's the implication of that to the South African economy?
I think that scares off international investors. I think it's very disappointing that, one of our political parties essentially incited, they said things that people reacted to, and there was mass looting of these international stores, H&M, throughout the country, which is very, very disappointing. Less disappointing of the political party that everyone's blaming for instigating it, but more disappointing of the actual people that took place in the looting. There's a difference between protesting against something, which is your right, and just outright looting, which is criminal, So I think from a standpoint of, international business, it poses a risk that people, I think, might not necessarily have considered to be possible. Obviously, this is a race issue. Racism is a very sensitive topic in South Africa, as we've seen with the reaction to the H&M debacle, if you want to call it that. So I think perhaps it makes, big international, multinational companies just be a little bit more careful about investing in South Africa, especially if there is any risk to them being perceived as, any form of racist. So it's very interesting. I don't quite know what to make of it. I have to say I'm disappointed in the people that took place in the looting. But unfortunately, there's nothing, we can't undo that. We can only make sure that we address some of the racial issues within South Africa, and we start to let people feel that they're included in the economy. And if that happens, then some of these issues will go away.
Yeah, hopefully things turn around quickly for the South African economy. Petri, thank you so much for your time on Business Tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, after the break, Nigeria's inflation drops to 15.37% in December. Stay with us.